right. So I think this will be the last recording. So, and I'm looking forward to our session. So here goes. Um, so I have a story that was it should have been included in my major life traumas kind of thing, but I didn't include it. And there is a bigger story here where I think it really resonates in terms of my overall life path. So I'm making it its own recording here. So, all right, let's go. So I was going into my senior year at school in Arizona, and somehow I was back in touch with my parents, and the energy was completely different. And I don't know. It was like they were actually kind of nice for the first time in my life and happy. And I couldn't figure out if it was because I was an adult. And then I was like, no, but I've known them in my adult years. But I just went with it, and they actually asked to come visit me out in Arizona. And again, because, I usually stayed at school, I would have an apartment with friends or something. So it was before classes started. I remember this. And it was also, I guess maybe the word is ironic, because when I had gone through that whole thing before I transferred schools, with the attack and the rape um, and then having the night out that I told you about where I have no memory of, what happened. And then my dad, I think again, I think my dad had to have helped out with some money, which is surprising because I don't know if I mentioned this when I was describing how I like put myself through school. They didn't help with school. And so like interesting that my dad, I mean, I guess I'll never know and it doesn't really matter, but is like to not put any money towards my school. I mean, I was paying my student loans off till I was in my 30s, like yeah, I think I paid it off in 2018, 19. It was after I'd come back from living in Miami and back to San Diego, so it's like recent years. But anyway, so again, it was like kind of weird, and I was like, you know what? That's fine. They were staying at a hotel. Obviously, it's not like I was hosting them or something. And the thing was, my mom was also trying to surprise me because she was like super fit. When she got off the plane, I almost didn't recognize her. And because she was always like a mom, maybe. I don't know how to describe it. And that was part of it. So they were excited to see me, is what I'm trying to say. And I had a visit with them, and it was actually fun. Went to dinner a few times. I'm sure I walked them around campus. That's all I really remember. It just was the first time I'd spent time with them. It wasn't like super relaxed or anything, but it was definitely not volatile and abusive and, and I just took this energy of like being myself, even though I was around them, which I think is hard for most of us as human beings to do after you have, a parent-child relationship or dynamic. You know, I can obviously only speak to myself, but I know for me, it was like I had to take myself out of being that child, and it was just really interesting. So, anyway, they go back to New York, and I'm still in Arizona. And I remember I was living with two of my girlfriends, and one of them, we used to joke around because she was reading a book, the book that the movie The Godfather is based on. And I don't think this much matters, but I don't know how to say this. It's so weird, but I have history with the families, sort of like my family. I don't know. Um, and not that I ever shared that with Robin, but she kind of knew, And I mean, we were friends for those few years that I was at school, and we were also housemates and blah blah. Um, but yeah, I don't even know. I feel like I'm so used to glossing over that. I don't even know how to speak to that, and it's probably not important anyway. But um, like my mom had she didn't even have to take her test for her driver's license. They just gave it to her, like when they got married, my mom and my dad, the Monsignor wanted to officiate the wedding, which is like a big deal. And actually, my mom said no because she didn't want to owe any favors. And it just always been intertwined. I mean, I didn't plan to go off on that tangent, but it's just really interesting that people like my friend Robin, who's reading this book, she's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, it's not really like that. I don't know. And then again, not that I'm an expert. But just growing up with certain families when things are happening, like being over at my friend's house and her dad and his friends show up and then they take off and just throw money at us to go get dinner. And I don't even know I don't know why I just started again telling a story. I have to divest myself from that one and move on. So anyway, like I said, my friend was into reading this book. So I remember I woke up and I had one of these really deep dreams, which I normally don't have, like I didn't have at the time. I don't really, if I have a dream, it was for a reason, like I was doing work on the other side or something like that. So anyway, I woke up and I didn't, it was one of those moments where I'm like, wow, that felt like it really happened, because it did, I'm sure. And I see, walking out through the living room that Robin's up because she's reading that book. And so I'm like, good morning. And I told her, I was like, hey, I had this dream last night. Can I tell you about it? And she's like, yeah. And I told her, I'm like, it's really weird because I had this dream that my dad and I were having a dance. Like, at like a wedding or like a kid's sweet 16 or something. They have like a daddy-daughter dance, I guess you could call it. Like the dance is formal and you're kind of like you're dancing. And and I was like, it was so intense and I felt so real. And I might have said, I can't remember now. I have it like, well, actually, I don't have the journal anymore that I wrote in. But I might have said that it felt like he was saying goodbye, but I don't know if I said that or not. But I said it was like so intense and like, why would I dance with my dad? And not that Robin knew the whole history of me and my dad, but I mean, like, and also, the fact that it was like so real. And I thought maybe it's because I had seen them not too long ago and I had kind of made peace. I don't know. And anyway, while I'm talking with Robin, I get a phone call because again, this is back to landline days. And it was New York calling, and it was my mom, and my dad had passed away very suddenly. So I was told, I still don't know, that he had a gastrointestinal aneurysm. So it wasn't like a brain aneurysm, it was actually in his body. And something along the lines of like he had had a physical not too long before that and everything was fine. And I don't know. But my mom and my dad were still on this like kick where they actually liked each other. I mean, it was like jaw-dropping. I still don't understand. I mean, good for them. But they were on another trip where they were in Connecticut in Mystic Seaport in the hotel room and apparently had been together, if you know what I'm talking about. And it was gross that my mom even ended up telling me this when I was back in New York for the funeral. But yeah, she said that they had just been together and she had taken a shower and then he went in to take a shower. So or vice versa. When she was in the shower, she came out and he was on the floor and it happened really quickly, something like that. So anyway, I couldn't believe it that I got the call because I had had the dream. So I was thinking, well, that was my dad checking in on his way out to say goodbye. And I mean, I had healed a little bit maybe, but I still had a lot of healing to do. I probably still have more healing to do, of course, but I remember feeling like that knowing, like how you learn some things and you think you know them, but unless you're like really living and breathing it, it's not really your go to, like your truth, that you're not being it yet. Like, so I think I knew about how, like I had signed up for certain lessons with him in this life, and I had some little bitty piece of me that could celebrate that, like he did his work with me, like he showed up even in again, excuse the language, but a shitty way, that it was, like a job well done or something. And it could be celebrated. But again, I wasn't like going like woohoo and fully embracing it. So, but because it was really horrible, the things that he did. I mean, even like kicking the cat. I mean, I can't even tell you. Like, that probably sounds really silly, but like I think he was trying not to kick me, and then he ended up kicking the cat and like kicked the cat far. Um, so things like that are what my memories were of him, beyond everything else that I might have even blocked out and never even remembered. But so that was really interesting, Dr. Pantea, that I remembered, that I had that dream and that happened. So anyway, also, I didn't know it at the time, but I flew back to New York and went to the funeral, and then back to my vicious sister, who told me that it was my fault that he died because I abandoned everyone. I'm sure she was talking about herself, like I abandoned her. But it was like really hard to hear, even though I didn't believe it, It was still like she's just so hard to be around. She was just like just awful all the time. I mean, there was no way to get in with her, like to actually connect. Yeah. And so I make it through the funeral and all that, which that's a whole other story, which I'll cut over because it's not pertinent to this. But I didn't realize until I got back, I don't know how many weeks later, but I was pregnant and I didn't know. And I think I knew I missed my cycle, but I thought it was just because of the stress and flying home. And, my dad had just died, made sense to me until I just figured I would take a test just to see, and it ended up I was, and then I went in to get a real blood test from the doctor, and it was confirmed. And so anyway, my boyfriend at the time, um, this is the last boyfriend I had before I ended up dating that guy Dion, who was completely abusive to me, the one that I ended up living with and was engaged, and I shared the story in another recording. But this guy, his name was John, and he was just, I have a pattern of just, I think we were definitely meant to meet. Like I feel it deeply with him, of, people that I've dated, but it just was like, it just wasn't a healthy relationship, It wasn't quite as like he never laid a hand on me. This was more like, I was dating someone before I dated him. And this guy I was really into, but it was more like a lust kind of thing. I mean, he did look like Keanu Reeves. Everyone calls him Keanu. Um, and he like that wasn't a healthy relationship either. I don't think I've ever had a healthy relationship, romantic or otherwise. I don't know. Um, so anyway, I just remember like if you think of the dynamic, like he really wanted to date me and wanted me to leave my boyfriend. It was like not maybe said verbatim, but uh but I actually did end up starting, like I wasn't dating the other guy Russ anymore, Keanu. And I started dating this guy John, and then all of a sudden the dynamics like shifted after a while. It was really weird. It was like he would keep me at bay. And I think he was like playing with a power dynamic. That was the thing. I don't know, but it was just really weird, um, how things change. He used to like leave me a card and put like, the meaning of my name. He would put one of those like little mini cards inside the card that you get that are about people's names, and it would say like most beloved, because my name, Amy, apparently means beloved. So, and then all of a sudden I don't know. It just changed. So that was a really hard relationship, but I didn't know the doozy of a one that was about to come up. But anyway, John is the one I was dating, and I was on birth control. So I know it's possible to get pregnant while you're on birth control, and I think it was also because I wasn't taking it at the same time every day, all the time, so it's not impossible, but it was still surprising. And so anyway, when I talked with John and told him, he immediately went into, well, my family, and again, he's from Chicago originally. He's Italian. I guess maybe put two and two together, which I knew about because his cousins and everyone had come up. They had a house in Scottsdale that kept open for family when they were in town. And so I knew, without saying it. And this is so funny to be talking about that in this call, but this recording. So anyway, he said, my family has a lot of money and you wouldn't even get to raise this child. I mean, it's incredible, Dr. Pantea, how much he switched. It's almost like when I shared with you my story when I was attacked outside the country, how fast that guy shifted from like trying to be so sweet and kind to all of a sudden calling me vicious things and putting his hands around my neck and like beating me, um, it's like just the same shift. All of a sudden, John's like a completely different person, like, and he said, he's like, you do what you want, but I just want you to know, like, if you decide to have this baby, you're not even going to see it. And I was like, oh my God. And I still wonder, I never asked him, but if he had talked to his, mom about it, and his mom told him to say that because she was an interesting character. And he also, I think his grandparents were still alive at that time, and his grandfather was the one that was really connected, So I wouldn't be surprised if it was an influence kind of thing, but I don't know. It doesn't much matter now, I suppose. But okay, so I end up getting the abortion, is what I'm saying. And I had to go through that essentially all by myself. John did give me like some money for it, but again, that was like a really hard decision. And I'm not going to make it into some political thing or, pro-life thing or whatever. But I never imagined I would be in that position. And also, I never thought I would choose to have an abortion. I mean, and I know it was because it was my last semester of school. I actually graduated like a semester early, like that spring or yeah, spring semester. That was my last semester. I didn't have to go to a winter semester. So, yeah, I ended up going through that and going through that on my own, and it was really hard. And so there are a couple things that happen as a result of this. So that was when I was what, 21, 22, 22, I think. 1997 it happened when my dad passed away just before school started. I remember I had to miss like the first week of classes because I was coming back from the funeral and everything. So yeah, it was 97 and then I had the abortion in 97. Oh, and interestingly enough, so my sister, ended up getting pregnant not too long after, like within months of me having had the abortion, right? And has my niece. And that's a whole other story. I mean, there's just like so much. I mean, this one has to do with the guy she picked was on like America's Most Wanted. I mean, it's like maybe I should write a book about all these things. So anyway, um, so cut to again, like I said, my sister got pregnant, had my niece, all this kind of stuff. And I never said anything to anyone about my abortion. Obviously, like John knew, and one of my roommates knew, but that was it. And so I'm cut to like I'm out here in San Diego. I moved out in 2010, and this happened in probably like 2011, 2012, maybe. I had found this little like crystals and mystic shop hidden away in Ocean Beach. It's in like a cove. I don't know how to describe it. It's called the Philosopher's Stone, and this woman, Wendy, owns it. And And there's a lot of stories with Wendy, but I had found out that she does readings, and I felt so aligned with her, like energetically, that I wanted to have a reading with her, you know? And in this reading, I still don't know what it was. It might have been like past life regressions, but she just asks, like some people stepped up to speak, you know, from the other side. So it was like a bunch of different things that she was doing, like, and here's the one story that, you know, happened in my reading that relates to my abortion. So she told me that this in this life, and again, I think this has significance to my life path now, which is why I'm trying to tell the story as best I can. So, yeah, so she said I was in a life that was in I don't it was before the Wild West years. I'm sorry, it's also really early. I can't remember the words. But she said it was like before those times. It might not have even been, if memory serves. Again, I no longer have the journal. It got lost when all my belongings got ruined. So shoot, she said that I was a man and I had a family. I was married to, you know, obviously a woman, and I had two daughters. And I lived in a house that I built that was like on a cliff almost overlooking the town down below. And oh, this is what I was saying. I think it might not have even been the United States. I'm trying to remember. It might have been like a Middle Eastern country or something. So that's why it wasn't like Laura Ingalls time, you know, like because that was the United States. I don't know. So she said that some disease had spread through the town, and again, I don't really remember. I want to say it's that disease, leprosy, something like leprosy or something like that, or maybe it was leprosy. And I had lost my older daughter, the eldest daughter of mine, to leprosy. And we were one of the last ones because of where our house was. Like we only had to go into town for necessities, you know. And I think it hit us later because of that fact that we weren't like directly immersed in the town. And but you know, it started to happen with my family. Like I said, my eldest daughter passed. And so when that happened, it became even more real, and I had to make a decision, my wife and I, whether we were gonna stay or or we were gonna leave, something like that. And shoot, now I don't really remember. I really wish I had my journal. This is killing me. Because the main thing was that my wife, I think, started to get sick. And so we had to decide. Oh no, my eldest daughter hadn't died yet. Sorry. She had gotten it. And then my wife started to show signs of it. That's what happened. That's what happened. Because the thing was, I had to make a decision whether to stay with them and try to get them back to health or leave because I had my youngest daughter to take care of. So I decided that I was going to leave. And I remember my wife obviously was very scared and she wasn't fully on board and all this kind of stuff. And so the thing that Wendy was telling me in this reading is that I was in some sort of like almost like a covered wagon kind of thing from like that time. And I was in it, you know, b with the reins of the horses, and a lot of dust was getting kicked up. And I was there with my youngest daughter, and we decided to leave. And she was describing the hate and the rage coming from my other daughter and my wife, not so much, but mainly my other daughter. And she said that youngest daughter that was with me that I left with because, you know, I was trying to keep her safe, otherwise she would have contracted it too. Um, Wendy said that dynamic, she said that this little girl tried to be born to me in this life. And meanwhile, Wendy knows nothing about it. I'm like new to the state even. I don't even have social media. Not that it would be on social media, but like we don't know any of the same people. And so she's like, yeah, she tried to be born to you, and you decided not to honor that contract because it would have been repeating this us against you dynamic. She said, I'm getting like sister energy in this life, and your mom, the woman that was your wife, she said that that dynamic was being set up where it would be you against them. And if your daughter from that life was born to you here, it would have been the two of you against the two of them. And you decided not to honor that contract and have it play out again in this life. And so you chose not to have the baby. And I was like, oh my gosh, can you imagine like hearing this and not being ready for it? And she said, so the baby was born to your sister and it changed. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my niece. I didn't say it out loud, but I'm having these epiphanies. And it really was like that in this life, though. My sister like teamed up with my mom and would get her to be awful or more awful to me to the point where, like, I don't even, I mean, just awful. It just really was a dynamic. And I was over it. Like I said, I tried many, many years to be kind to her, to empathize. And she just kicked me in the teeth over and over again. I mean, just like awful things. If I was able to tell you the stories, you'd know. And and so I separated myself. I was estranged from them for many years. And so my niece ends up being born to my sister, like I said, and it totally makes sense, Dr. Pantea, that she was the baby that I had the abortion for. And then she was born to my sister, just like this woman said. And then my niece ended up to be more like me. Like, it's just amazing. Even she was artistic, like a little mini me. And she was also super nice and was like horrified by how vicious her mom and her grandma were. And it's also pretty crazy. That's a whole other story because my sister raising my niece, she would call her a slut. She'd lock her in the garage to like not be able to come in the house. I mean, it's just awful. And I don't know, it's just awful. And I didn't know about these things until later. And then I don't know, it's just a mess. So anyway, that was really interesting. And also while I'm out here in San Diego, I was part of because I've always gravitated toward people that are more open-minded, I guess you could say. I mean, you could use the word spiritual, but I don't know. I feel like everyone has their own definition of what that is. So I always hesitate to use the word spiritual, but it wasn't organized religion, it was more spiritual. So there was a group, an older couple, they lived in a house in Lakeside. Again, I don't know if you know the area, and they would have this thing. My friend Ann and I, our friend Tim knew this couple, Tom and Linda, and so they called it Cloud Walk, and it really wasn't any organized retreat or anything, but it was at their house on the side of the mountain there in Lakeside, beautiful, almost like overlooking a cliff. That's why they called it Cloud Walk, because then when it was misty, you felt like you could just walk right off from their land onto the clouds and the sky. It was beautiful. But anyway, I met so many beautiful people over the years. They since stopped having it they, I probably was only attending it for like 5, 6, 7 years. And then now they both have dementia and they live in a house in Santee here. And that's a whole other story. Um, but yeah, Tom and Lindsay used to host this, and a lot of healers, like different people with different gifts. It was just so beautiful. I mean, I've had other little groups, where you meet up for kind of like an event, but this was always like just such a beautiful gathering. It felt like what Atlantis would feel like or something, like just the mystics and everything getting together. I don't know, it was beautiful. So anyway, this is again, sorry, it's just so hard to talk by myself that making this longer than it needs to be. So let me reset and do my best again. So um so there was a time, like sometimes when we would have this, it was maybe like once a month or whatever, there'd be like a bonfire thing because they had so much land. and a drum circle. Like there was a meditation. I mean, we would do like all kinds of stuff. People would come and go throughout the day. It would go into like all hours of the night. And at one point, sometimes people will go in the house and just find themselves organized as like, like it didn't happen that way. No one made a cow call. Like everyone who wants to do a reading, come inside. It would just happen. You know how that is. And so anyway, we were doing some kind of reading for this young girl, and her mom had brought her. Her mom was part of the like community, I'll call it. And she had brought her daughter that day, and she had even said around the time of her showing up that day that her daughter was going through something and that she hoped if anyone felt so called sometime during the day or whatever, that someone would do a healing for her if they felt so called, you know? So all of a sudden, again, I'm getting the chills. It was like this time where everyone, like there might have been only like 30 or maybe 40 people there. I don't know if that, but there's like 10 or 15 of us that are all of a sudden like gathering in the house. And the woman that is there with her daughter, and they said it's time. And Linda's kind of saying, like, hey, if you want to sit in the circle and share what comes through for this young girl, I don't remember her name. And so everyone went around, and I remember this guy, Tim, who actually, I know I'm jumping around, but Tim, I still know him. So there's Tom and Linda. I know it's confusing with Tom and Tim, but Tim's a guy who is like a friend of ours. Um, and he had some gifts throughout his life, like beautiful stories if you get to know him that he might share. And but he has cancer now. He only has like a few months left to live. It's like really sad. We were texting and I can't even see him. He's with his family and it's like a whole thing. But um anyway, he used to try to mentor me in a way because I have things that come through, but it's never like something that I trusted in. I don't know how to say it. Like I would never own being like, "Oh, I'm this," or, and I think it really does just have to do with the time of my life. Ebbs and flows. And I don't have any desire at all. Like I think I mentioned to you that this would happen when I would do coaching, but that's also because I was in my spiritual practice at that time. It's like I get very like into it. I don't know how to describe it. But again, I don't know if this came through when we talked. I have zero desire to do coaching. Like I enjoyed it at the time, but I really don't. I have no desire to do coaching again. So anyway, I'll skip over that. But anyway, Tim used to try to like encourage me, which is a beautiful thing. So I didn't expect to speak in the circle. I was just there to give love, and shine. And so Tim was like, Amy, why don't you share? And so I shared something that came through, and I remember that as being a really interesting experience just because it was a call to like really trust what came through and just say whatever. So I appreciate that I had that experience. But anyway, so we get through the whole circle, like people are saying these beautiful, amazing, like things that like were stunned. I was stunned, and the girl was also stunned that they knew. And because the mom never said what the daughter was dealing with, but it was definitely coming through in these like readings, if you want to call them that. So anyway, it took a while. I don't know time how it makes sense, but it just felt like it went on, because it was like a big circle and everyone spoke. So then all of a sudden, this is like out of a movie. Um, Tim says, "Well, I think we all know, like, whose team is coming forth, that we really need to let them talk for this one person in our group." And it's like in a movie, Dr. Pantea. Tim didn't even say my name, but everyone in the circle turned to look right at me, like almost like on cue. And apparently my guides or spirit family or whatever, or if past ancestors were behind me in spirit and trying to get everyone's attention, like, hey, this girl needs to hear XYZ. So again, I really wish I didn't have my journal get ruined, but I don't remember exactly. I remember this one part, and this has to do with my abortion, by the way. This is why I'm bringing it up. So I ended up having this young gal in our like community. Her name was Lauren, and she spoke in the circle, once everyone was like tuning into me and sharing things with me, which was very beautiful. She said that I had had something that had started to be, but I chose not to let it come to fruition. Something like that. Again, I can't really remember, but it was along those lines. And then I was like really feeling it when she said it. And then whatever, I'll just skip over the whole, group thing about me or whatever. Plus, I can't remember. It's in my journal that's lost or ruined. So I ended up after that whole thing like kind of broke up, I was sitting on a little couch with Lauren and she said, "Can I talk to you about, the circle earlier?" And I was like, "Sure." And she's like, "I hope you understood my message." She said, I was holding something back because I didn't know if you would feel comfortable with me mentioning it in front of the whole group." And she said that what she was trying to tell me about was my abortion, that there was a part of me, a big part of me that wasn't healed and was like judging myself for having this abortion, that I needed to focus on healing that in myself. And that's what didn't come to fruition, there was the baby. And I was like, wow. And I was telling her, openly and honestly, obviously, I was like, I was fine. I never really, felt like I was feeling guilty. I feel like every person, like, or woman, obviously, since women are the ones that have babies, but everyone should be able to do what they want with their body. And I really don't think it's like a Catholic religion thing where it's like a sin if you have an abortion. I'm like, I never, bought into that or feel that way or think that way. I don't know exactly what I said, but that's really how I felt. I never felt like guilt or, I just felt like things happened as they should have. And yeah, so anyway, I just thought that was really interesting because again, Lauren, I mean, I kind of knew her through the community, but I never talked with her about anything like that. Like, how would she know? Anne didn't even know that I had had an abortion, and Anne was my close friend that I would also go to the cloud walks with. So I don't know, it was just like really interesting. And I thanked her. Interestingly enough, with all the weirdness continues, this gal Lauren, she used to go to Hawaii a lot to like swim with the dolphins. She felt very spiritually connected with the dolphins. And she ended up coming back to San Diego after living in Hawaii, and she built a yurt on Tom and Linda's property in Lakeside, up on the mountain. And she became someone who only eats air, like not a vegetarian or something like that. Like you don't eat anything, and I don't think you even drink anything. And Tom and Linda became like very concerned about her because they hardly would see her even though she was on the property because she would stay in and around the yurt and not come up to the house. And she ended up somehow, it's like a very twisted thing, but they found her car somewhere near an area where there were caves, and her car was deserted, and they found her body in the cave, and there was a gun. And so it's just like really interesting. This was one of the most pure souls I've ever met. If she's tuned into me now to listen, like I just want to say thank you, Lauren. You're beautiful, so sweet. Thank you, thank you. Because there's just so many offshoots and tangents of like all of my like experiences. So, but the main thing is again that whole like story about my dad passing away and how he, I think, came to visit me before he passed. Which that still is like unbelievable to me, like wow. And then my the whole dynamic with like them and us and my, the whole thing, because that's how it's been. My sister like uses my mom, or I mean, my mom has since passed, but like used to use my mom for against me. And it's just like a whole sick. I mean, I could tell you like again a million stories about what she would do. Like even times where I think I was back in the city and I drove out to Long Island and there was a snow and my car had front wheel drive or something like that. Yeah, it had front wheel drive, not rear wheel. And I had asked my mom, I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I put like the kitty litter that you guys have in the garage, if I put some of that in my trunk?" And my mom's like, "Sure." And my sister found out that I had put the kitty litter in the trunk, and she told my mom, I could hear her in the house because it's just the three of us in this house. Um, and and my sister's like, "You tell her, put that, I don't care if she dies out there, that's my kitty litter." And like, I mean, that was just like normal. Oh, that felt so ugly to say out loud. So I had, and my mom made me put the kitty litter back. Like, can you imagine? Like, I could have died out there on the road. Like, it's just kitty litter, and it's not even all of the kitty litter that you have. But that's how it was. It was so beyond awful, Dr. Ponte. I don't even think I could talk about that, but it was very severe. So yeah, that's it, I guess, for now. Thanks for listening. Okay.